Let's talk about your money for a second. What if you had total control over it? Not banks, not tech giants, but just you. Today, we're diving into a pretty radical vision for the future, a new kind of financial system that's actually driven by citizens for citizens. The source material for this kicks off with this quote, and honestly, it just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly frames the problem we're going to unpack. Think about it. For as long as money has existed, someone has been in charge. Someone's been mediating it, controlling it, and deciding who gets to play and by what rules. And really, that control has just changed hands over the centuries, right? First, you had kings literally stamping their faces on coins. Then, it shifted to central banks printing paper money. And now, well, in our digital world, that power has landed squarely with the tech giants, the ones who run the app stores. They've become the new gatekeepers to our financial lives. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the problem of today's gatekeepers, then jump into the roller coaster of crypto's promise and its big problems. After that, we'll get into the main event, the decentralized hub, how it's built to fight fraud and what it all means for our financial future. Okay, let's get into it. First up, money and its gatekeepers. We're going to dig into how we got from old-school royal mints all the way to today's super powerful app stores. So the source we're looking at calls this the walled garden, and it's a perfect description. I mean, if you're a developer today and you want to build a new financial tool, you are completely at the mercy of companies like Apple and Google. They can take a massive 30% cut of your revenue, and they do it all with these vague, constantly changing rules. A brilliant new wallet or an exchange app, poof, it could be gone overnight, just banned. That is a huge amount of centralized power, isn't it? Okay, so that brings us to our next chapter, crypto's promise and peril. Because, crypto really came about as a direct answer to that kind of control. It offered this incredible promise of freedom. But, and this is a big but, there's been a massive, often painful gap between the beautiful idea and the messy reality. And man, that promise was so compelling. The idea of true financial sovereignty, real privacy, a world where you don't have to ask for permission to send or receive value. That was the dream. The whole point was to build something that would make those gatekeepers totally obsolete. But in the absolute frenzy that followed, things went sideways. The dream got tainted and fast. And this really shows you the disconnect. The promise of sovereignty, it was met with a reality full of scams and rug pulls. The idea of a trustless system, well, that was undermined by just so much fraud. And the dream of freedom, that got absolutely shattered by these spectacular collapses of centralized exchanges, the very thing crypto was supposed to replace. They betrayed the core idea and left a whole lot of people with nothing. So that's the setup. But out of that wreckage, out of that gap between the promise and the peril, our source proposes a new model, a different way forward. The decentralized hub, a citizen-driven infrastructure. Okay, so what is this thing really? Well, think of it as a financial system that just doesn't ask for permission. It's not an app you download from a store that can get yanked tomorrow. It's more like a network you become a part of. And it's designed to be unstoppable because it lives on the computers of its users, not on some big corporate server somewhere. And its strength, its resilience, comes from how it's built. The source explains it's distributed using something called IPFS. You can kind of think of it like a massive peer-to-peer library. The system's files are spread out everywhere, not just in one place. It's secured with really cool tech like zero-knowledge proofs, which is a clever way to prove something is true without actually revealing the private data. And your identity is a decentralized identifier, a DID, which is like a digital passport that only you control. So what's the bottom line? There's no central server to shut down, no single point of failure. And this is a really fundamental shift. You don't just download the hub, you participate in it. You go from being a consumer of a service to being an active part of the network. You and everyone else using it are the hub. All right, that brings up a huge question, right? If it's so open, what stops all the scams we saw before? Well, let's look at how this thing is actually designed to build trust, an architecture against fraud. Our source argues that the whole problem starts with this quote right here. Centralized exchanges basically taught a whole generation of people to do the one thing crypto was invented to avoid, to just hand over their assets, to give up their keys and trust a company. And we all saw what happened when that trust was broken. Everything was lost. And this really makes the difference crystal clear. With a centralized exchange, it's your keys, but they're in their vault. With a decentralized hub, it's your keys, your vault, period. Instead of all the money being pooled together and controlled by some company, you're just interacting directly, peer to peer. You're not trusting a company anymore. You're trusting transparent code that anyone can check. It all comes down to this simple idea. Your wallet never leaves your hand. That's the mantra. The whole system is built on self-custody. Every transaction starts and ends with you, secured by your signature. Okay, so you're in control of your funds. Makes sense. But that leads to the next big question. Who makes the rules? In any system, someone has to govern it, right? So who's in charge here? I love this metaphor from the source. It proposes governance as a shield, not a cage. So it's not about top-down control and a bunch of red tape that kills new ideas. No, it's about protecting the community with clear, transparent rules that everyone agrees on. It's a system that's actually designed to encourage innovation, not suppress it. And a huge part of that freedom is this concept called forking. Basically, if a big chunk of the community really disagrees with where things are going, they're not just stuck, they're not silenced. They can literally copy the code, since it's open source, and start their own version. So what this does is, it turns disagreement from a problem into a feature. It's how the system evolves. You get a whole forest of different experiments, not just one single tree. Okay, so let's put it all together. A system built on self-custody and community governance. If something like this actually took off, what would that new financial world even look like? What's the big picture here? Well, the day-to-day changes could be massive. Just imagine it. A merchant gets paid instantly and doesn't lose that 3% chunk to a credit card company. You could send money to family overseas without getting hit with insane bank fees. An artist or creator could share their work directly with their audience and actually keep what they earn. In this kind of world, you're not just a user of a service. You are the network. You're a node that keeps it all running. So when you boil it all down, this isn't really just about a new piece of tech. It's bigger than that. The argument here is that this is about building freedom into the infrastructure itself, making it the foundation of our financial lives. It's a completely different way of thinking about value. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. What happens? What happens when the government of value is no longer a palace, but a plaza open to all? What does our world look like when that power is taken from a select few in a guarded castle and is instead placed in a public square where anyone, where you, can build, participate, and share? That is a future worth thinking about.